Evening, everybody. It's Monday, December 19th, and we will call this meeting of the Sault Ste. Marie City Commission to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Gary.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer.
Here.
Commissioner Baspis Rath. Commissioner Habusta.
Here.
Commissioner Marble.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Here.
Commissioner Bosphus Rath did reach out, and she has a sick child tonight, so she couldn't make it, so we need a motion to excuse.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and supported. All in favor, say aye. Aye. She's excused. If everybody would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Good to see a full crowd tonight. We'll move right on into item B, which is proclamations and recognitions. So City Manager Chapman, if you want to introduce.
Thank you,
our
Mr.
guests.
Mayor. Tonight, our police department will be presenting a civilian citation to, I can't find the name. David Petrangelo. Thank you. Couldn't find it. To read the citation is Officer Rebecca Carruthers. If you want to come on up, Mr. Petrangelo.
Come on over. Oh, man. Thank you, Commissioners. On October 29th, 2022, officers of the Sault Ste. Marie Police Department responded to Hearthside Assisted Living for a missing elderly female resident. Officers began searching the immediate area and assisted staff with searching the facility. It wasn't until you arrived and provided access to the facility's camera system that officers were able to confirm that the resident had left the facility. Your review determined that the resident had walked out of the facility approximately 2 hours before police were called. After providing officers with all the information you had and doing all you could from inside the facility, you went outdoors to search for the resident yourself. Your persistent and diligent searching resulted in you locating the resident on a secluded road in an overgrown ditch and stuck at the bottom of some chain link fencing. When officers joined up with you, the resident was rescued from the ditch and provided medical attention. You aided significantly in the search and rescue of the missing resident. Officers had searched that road where the resident was located but were unable to see her due to the vegetation. Your thorough search efforts and dedication to the mission resulted in the resident being located with only minor injury. Without your help, the resident would not have been located as quickly. And with the outdoor temperatures being 45 degrees and dropping quickly, she may have suffered more severe injuries. On the behalf of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, thank you for your assistance and actions that night.
Oh, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the officers on site. They were very good. They calmed our staff. They gave me clear instructions inside the building. And when I left, they told me what to do if I found her, which I did. And then when they came on site, they were so professional. They got her out of the ditch, called the ambulance, and it was a good outcome. So it was an honor watching them to work and do their job well under the circumstances. So thank you very much.
Congratulations, Mr. Petrangelo. Thank you very much for your service, and thank you to the Sioux City Police Department. It certainly is a great story with a great outcome, so thank you very much. Thanks to the rest of the officers for your support. Okay, we'll move on into item C, which is public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments on any of our regular scheduled items this evening? Anybody in the audience that would like to speak on any of the agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on into item D, which is the consent agenda. Deputy City Manager Robin Troyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Under the consent agenda, 1, approval of the City Commission meeting minutes of December 5th. Item 2, acceptance of the Airport Advisory Board meeting minutes of November 10th. Item 3, acceptance of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority meeting minutes of November 8th. Item 4, acceptance of the Economic Development Corporation meeting minutes of November 8th. Item 5, acceptance of the Historical Development Commission meeting minutes of October 25th. Item 6, acceptance of the Historic Structures Management Committee meeting minutes of October 19th. Item 7, acceptance of the Local Development Finance Authority meeting minutes of November 15th. Item 8, acceptance of the Parks and Recreation Board meeting minutes of August 30th. Item 9, acceptance of the Tax Increment Finance Authority 3 meeting minutes of November 8th. Item 10 is resignation of Tom Fornicola from the Downtown Development Authority. Item 11 is consideration of MDOT's performance resolution for municipalities. Item 12 is consideration to apply for a Mice Park grant for multiple boat ramp improvements within the city. Item 13 is consideration of an agreement with American Transmission Company as part of the Carbide project. Item 14 from the Downtown Development Authority on behalf of the Outhouse Consortium, authorization to sell liquor on city-owned property for the downtown New Year's Eve celebration. And item 15 is approval of the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Would any commissioner like any of those items further explained or any item removed for individual consideration? Seeing none, Commissioner Bauer.
So moved that we pass the consent agenda.
Support.
Not
Yes.
everybody all at once.
It has been moved and supported that we pass the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item E, special orders of business. City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up first for commission tonight is a presentation on our fiscal year audit ending June 30th, 2022. Tonight we have Derek Miller as our auditor with Roslyn Prestige and Company, PC. I'll have a PowerPoint. Bonnie, if you want to throw my screen up on the monitor really quick. Audit presentation, December 19th. Is this the right one, right? Yep. And I will hand it over to Mr. Miller.
I'm Derek Miller with Roslyn Prestige. I was the lead auditor on the financial audit this year, and I'm here to present the results of the 2022 financial audit with you. What I've done that Brian is going to scroll through for us is our presentation packet. So instead of producing separate graphs or charts with you, I prefer to go through the material itself because I think it encourages the board and the users of the financial statements to understand what's in the report itself as opposed to a summary that I would create outside of the financial report itself. So starting with the independent auditor's report, the goal of our audit is to get to the place where we can issue our opinion. That's really the only thing that belongs in the financial statements to us as the auditors. And I've highlighted some key areas here, which state that we've audited the accompanying financial statements of the City of Sault Ste. Marie as of and for the year ended June 30, 2022. In our opinion, the financial statements refer to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the city. So that's a clean opinion. That's the highest opinion we can give. There is one item to note here under change in accounting principle. As discussed in the notes to the financial statements, during 2022, the city adopted new accounting guidance, GASB 87 leases. Our opinion is not modified in respect to this matter. So GASB stands for Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They're the standard setter at the national level who applies accounting pronouncements to all governmental entities. I do want to note that management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements. So where I like to start is I kind of changed the order up of what's actually in the report itself. And I like to start with the modified accrual financial statements because that's the records that the city keeps their books on, is on the modified accrual basis. There are some funds that are on the full accrual basis, but I like to start with the modified accrual basis. There are a few new items this year, as I mentioned, relating to GASB 87. I have highlighted those throughout the packet. If we want to start with the balance sheet of governmental funds, yes. So this is, one of the items I've highlighted here is the lessor receivable and a deferred inflow related to lessor activity. Those are new items that were not on last year's financial statements that relate to certain lessor activity that the city participates in. I have a much larger note that I'll go over later, but I just wanted to highlight for you that that is a new item this year. There's also highlighted in the top corner is the non-major governmental funds. So there's several additional funds that don't meet the criteria of being a major fund, and so those are included in a supplemental schedule included in the back of the report. I'm not going to review that with you, but just wanted to point out that there is some additional information available in the back of the report about that. So the next page is the income statement, also on the modified accrual basis here. I have highlighted the total expenditures as well as the fund balance number at the bottom. So the way we like to look at fund balance is as a percentage of current year expenses. So if I've added a little chart at the bottom there to show you that for the current year, the fund balance as a percentage of expenditures is 34.1%. That's up from last year where it was 26.6%. So a good direction to see there is that that balance is growing. And yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on that page. Moving to the next page, this is a reconciliation from the modified accrual to the full accrual. So there's a whole list of items here. These are the items that we add to come up with the full accrual statements, which we'll review next. There are groups on here of capital assets, long-term receivables, internal service fund activity, long-term debt, as well as pension activity. So just an idea of what's being added to the modified accrual statements to come up with the full accrual statements. I am going to spend the most amount of time talking about the full accrual statements because I think they give the best representation of the city's activities because it includes all of the assets and all the liabilities. So if we could move on to that next. So here we have 3 columns, including 4 if you include the total column, governmental activities, business type, total, and then component units. The numbers for each of those are shown moving from left to right. Most of the footnotes will be prepared on the amount that agrees to the total column. So I've highlighted the numbers there, and we'll see how those tie in with the footnotes later. I won't read off the individual items for you that I have highlighted here. I just wanted to note that there are additional information available in Note 20, Note 16, et cetera, and I will touch on those more in detail when we get to those notes. The new items this year, we can see are the lessor receivable at the top, the lease liability, and then the related to lessor activity a little further down. All of those are new line items that have not been included until this year, and they are new this year because of, again, GASB 87. All right, moving on to the next page is the statement of revenues, statement of activities. So this would be all of the revenues and expenses for the city for the year, the income statement more or less. The only item I think here that I'd like to touch on was there were some prior period adjustments that needed to be included in the financial statements as a result of some testing, and I will touch on that a little bit later. But I just wanted to point out to you here that there were prior period adjustments, and we'll get to that when we get to the footnotes. Any questions so far? Okay, I'm trying to be respectful of your time, so moving through this rather quickly. There are 2 additional pages here. This is the detail of the proprietary funds. I'm not going to read the numbers on you here, but just pointing out that this was one of the columns that came over from the full accrual statements. Again, more information available there for your review, but just trying to give you an idea of how the pieces of the puzzle come together. So the next page I'd like to touch on is the statement of fiduciary net position, which is the one following this. So a little different presentation last year to this year. So what we did in the presentation of the financial statements this year was we separated out the defined contribution trust fund. In prior years, it had been included with the tax collections. We felt that it more accurately represented the information that was going on if we separated those into two columns as opposed to having them reported in a single column. So I just wanted to highlight for you here that that was separated out to make that activity a little bit more clear about what was happening. So that the middle column there is a new column. And then that's the income statement associated with it, which I just wanted to share with you so you had it available. The next spot would be the footnote. We're getting into the detailed footnotes. So as with anything, with any financial statements, the footnotes are a really crucial part of the financial statements where we can get into a little bit more detail instead of just showing the numbers. So I have highlighted several items here that I'd like to cover with you. So if we see the benefits dash self-insurance, this is a new footnote that we've included this year in the financial statements to give you a little bit of an idea of what went into the calculation of the incurred but not reported. Incurred but not reported has to do with medical claims that have been incurred but not yet reported to the self-funded health insurance fund. So what we end up doing is going through a calculation process to determine what that liability is. As you guys are most likely aware, there's a delay in medical bills coming in, so we do record a liability to represent those potential claims which are outstanding at year end. The next page is the change in accounting principle. So this is one of the notes about GASB 87. There's a lot of information in here, but to boil it down for you, as a lessee, essentially you record a right to use asset for the value of the property that you're leasing and a corresponding liability associated with the lease term. As a lessor, you record a lease receivable and a corresponding deferred inflow of resources related to leasing. So that's kind of what the summary says here under Note 18. Note 19 is detailed information about the leases that are payable. So from a lessee standpoint, so I've included here a brief description of the lease. It pertains to the DDA where they are leasing some space, and then a calculation, a disclosure of the future payments for 3 years that will come due in the future. For me, the more important or the more relevant one here is Note 20, though. There are several leases where the city acts as a lessor, and so all that new activity that I had discussed in the financial statements earlier really is what populates here. So there was 5 different leases where the city is a lessor that met the threshold of materiality. There were additional leases, but if they're not material, those don't get reported. So that has come to a summary a little further down here. So this is a schedule of the leases between the Sault Ste. Marie and the DDA, and then the revenue recognized along with interest income, and then finally the year-end balances. And the number I've highlighted there, there's 4 numbers that are highlighted in Note 20. Those are the amounts that we saw in the financial statements earlier that were also highlighted. So if you want detail behind what makes up those notes, you'll find that here listed out by the individual leases. So a little further down, Note 21. So I mentioned earlier that there was a prior period adjustment that we worked with management to record. It came to our attention that during our audit procedures, there was some errors in the calculation of the pension liability from previous years, the 2019 investment returns. This error caused the deferred outflows related to pension to be underreported by $662,000, and the deferred inflows related to pension to be underreported by $765,000. The total impact to the financial statements was $1.4 million, which was spread across governmental, business type, and component unit activities. It's our understanding that management was not actively involved in the pension calculations in prior years, and we believe that management's involvement in these calculations is an important step to identify and correct errors in calculations. We've worked closely with management during the audit this year to help them obtain an understanding of how pension calculations are performed, and management did prepare their own pension calculations this year. We believe this is an important step to reduce such errors in the future.
Hey, Derek, just really quick.
Sure.
Who did do the calculations on what you were just talking about?
So this year, the calculations were completed by management with our assistance. It's my understanding in the prior year that was not the case.
Ms. Collins, do you know who did it in the previous years?
Yes, our audit firm completed the calculation.
Gotcha.
So with that prior period adjustment, of course, we have to spread that across the different activities, governmental, business type, and component unit. So that you will see prior period adjustments on all of those financial statements as a result of this change. Final note that I wanted to talk about was the upcoming accounting pronouncements. Seems like GASB hasn't given us much of a break. They keep coming up with new pronouncements every year. This one, which I do think will impact the city, is called GASB 96. It deals with subscription-based technology arrangements, or CBITA for short. Essentially what you have to do is record a liability associated with a subscription you've signed with a software company, and then a corresponding right to use asset for that similar subscription term. So there's a lot of similarities between GASB 87 on leases and GASB 96 on subscription-based technology arrangements. So we're working with management to make sure that they're ready to implement this new pronouncement. That's not effective until fiscal year 2023, and I have every expectation that that implementation will go smoothly for the city. The next page, this is a schedule that a lot of my clients find a lot of value out of. This is an 8-year recap of the pension information. And I find it's a great place to look. It gives you a recap of the liability at the top, the plan assets, which are referred to as the fiduciary net position, and then the net pension liability at the bottom. There are 2 of these. One is for the MERS plan and one is for the police and fire plan. So if we scroll to the next one here, you'll see this is for the police and fire plan. So I don't need to touch on anything with you there. I just want to share that this is a great resource if you're looking for a recap of the activity in the pension plan. This is usually where I like to go. And then this letter is what's referred to as a gas letter. For the government auditing standards. There was one finding we had this year that we needed to include in the report, which is highlighted a little further down. It states that we consider a deficiency described in the accompanying schedule of findings and question costs as item 2022-001 to be a material weakness. And that finding relates to material journal entries that were proposed by the auditor. So during our testing, we found that there was some revenues received for ARPA funds. And as a result of our testing, there needed to be a journal entry recorded to reduce the revenues of 1.4 million and increase deferred revenue, because not all that money was spent. And so that was found as a result of our testing. I do want to note that this was a new funding source that the city had not gotten in the past. And actually, this is my most frequently occurring finding this year in all of our municipality audit reports, is the fact that people are not deferring this. So it doesn't surprise me. This has happened a lot, but I do need to share with you that was a journal entry as a result of our testing.
And this is just a one-time funding source? Maybe if we're lucky, we'll get it every year, but as of right now, ARPA is just that one-time boost that came in from the federal government.
And I think that's what caught a lot of people off guard. It was a one-time thing, not
Yeah.
familiar with it, and so, yes, thank you. I did also want to note that we have completed the single audit as well. That's not included in these financial statements. We're working towards issuing that under a separate cover, but I can share with you that there were no findings found as part of the single audit. That was the extent of what I wanted to cover with you. Were there any questions?
Thank you, Derek. Anybody have any questions at all? Commissioner Bauer, would you like to ask the Bill Lynn
Sure. The question that we always ask in the end is, if you were grading the city of Sault Ste. Marie like a teacher would, you know, A, B, C, et cetera, what grade would you give us then, financially?
As far as the staff or the actual
No, as far as the city.
Okay.
How are we doing?
as a whole? I would say, truthfully, an A. I've never worked with more highly qualified and competent people than I have working on this engagement, and I'm truly not just saying that. This was a pleasure to work on. First-year audits are always challenging, and this one was as well, but working with Kristen, Kelly, and the rest of the team, in my mind, I've never had a first-year audit go smoothly. That's not to say that there weren't problems we solved together or, extra work that had to be done. But at the end of the day, it really went much better than I think we could have possibly expected.
Thank you.
That's great. Any other questions or comments? Just have a couple comments. Thank you, Mr. Miller. That was a very good and comprehensive coverage of the audit, and we appreciate that. And we know that it's difficult coming in first time to a community. I wanted to give a shout out to Kristen Collins, Callie Perrin, and the entire finance department. You and I have the same degree from the same college.
Do we really?
And
Oh.
I was going to be a CPA, and I got into internal auditing and decided to go into lending and banking instead. But as an auditor, I had to do everything that you have done this year, Kristen, and it is a pain. And it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of pressure, going through all of the confirmations and getting all the information to the auditors, especially new auditor, orienting them to our systems, to our entire city, to all of our component units and everything else. I know it's really a big job, and it's a lot of stress. So kudos to the finance department, and led by Kristen, certainly to city manager and all the department heads for everything they've gone through. It's good to hear that we have an A. I think Standard & Poor's in our last rating a few years back was a double A plus or something like that. But so we've always been rated very highly, and that's a testament to the strong finance department and department heads that we have. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kristen.
Perfect.
So I don't know, City Manager, if you have any comments before we go to our accepting of the audit, or do you
No,
want us to
sir.
go ahead and, Sure, Mr. Rubenstein.
Brian, you'd mentioned us as a audit committee potentially still getting together in January. Can you just,
I have that after this.
perfect. All right, there we go.
Thank you for bringing it up. I was gonna slip it in there.
You want to do it then? Or what do you
Yeah,
wanna
I think we do the vote first, and then,
Okay.
so, did you want to make the motion, Commissioner Rubenstein?
Motion to accept the audited financial statement of the City of Sault Ste. Marie for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, as presented by Rosalind Prestige and Company, PC.
Support?
It's been moved and supported that we accept the audit. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. And thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein, for bringing it up. We did approve formation of an audit committee in July of last year, and we have not had an opportunity prior to your engagement to get it moving, but we will, and we will be involved in the next year. Commissioner Rubenstein and myself were appointed to the committee, and also Mayor Pro Tem, who is not with us anymore, Kathy Twardy, not on the commission anymore, I should say. And Commissioner Bauer, who is Mayor Pro Tem now, said he had expressed an interest and would serve on the board if anybody wanted to make a motion to put him in to replace Commissioner Twardy.
I'll move to appoint Commissioner Bauer, or Mayor Pro
Second.
Tem Bauer.
Been moved and supported to add Commissioner Bauer as Mayor Pro Tem to the Audit Committee. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Little addition to the agenda, I guess. Have a safe drive back to home. Thank you. Yep. So, moving on into item E, special orders of business. Item number 2, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission review is the city's 5-year master recreation plan. And tonight we have Gage with McKenna. He's our consultant that was the lead for developing the 5-year master plan. Come on up, Gage. So tonight we are only holding our public hearing for the Parks and Rec master plan. Staff and I will follow up with the commission at the next meeting for final commission consideration. We were still working on the draft late last week, but we wanted to hold the public hearing tonight because we have to by, I don't know if it's by law or DNR rules and regulations.
DNR rules, regulations.
Yeah, DNR rules and regulations say that we have to post the, a public comment period with the governing board 30 days in advance. And if we missed this window, it would be after February, and our deadline is February 1st, 2013, or 2023. So we have to have it in by February 1st to ensure that we are eligible for any grant funding opportunities next calendar year. So we have a draft presented to you. It's probably 99% done. There's probably some tweaks that we have to do, but in the spirit of a public hearing as well, if there's anything that comes up tonight, then we still have the opportunity to change the plan as well. So Gage has a PowerPoint that will kind of walk you through the process that McKenna walked us through. Bonnie, if you want to throw it up on my screen again here. And as we go through, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to ask them, but we'll do the PowerPoint if there's any commission discussion or questions, and then we'll ask the mayor to open the formal public hearing, receive comments, and then close it. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Gage.
Thanks, Brian. And thank you, commissioners, for hosting this public hearing and inviting me to speak. I'd like to first start off by thanking the community, the residents, the staff that have worked really diligently with me over the last several months to put this all together. A lot of participation and a lot of hard work went into this. So this is definitely your document, and like Brian said, it's at about 99%. A month ago, it was probably more at 80%, and we've gotten a lot of comments and feedback since then. So I'm very excited to present this to you tonight. Well, my computer's not working, but I can see it there. Have an agenda for just going through why we're doing this, why we're here tonight, touching on some of the components of the plan, and then, of course, opening up the public hearing for public comment. So Brian did touch on this a little bit. The MDNR, Michigan Department of Natural Resources, suggests that a city updates their plan every 5 years. This keeps a city eligible for various grant funding through the state. It is also a guidebook, a roadmap for parks and recreation planning over the next 5 years. So it really provides a solid snapshot of the community and your existing assets. And again, it just addresses the city's current and future park and recreation needs. So this plan, it exists to not only communicate values and help guide decision-making for Parks and Recreation staff and the commission, but it creates that record of all of your assets, and it also creates a record of public comment. So a component of this plan is making sure that there's robust participation, and that is recorded and included in the final plan. It's used to determine possible programs and, of course, make the city eligible for funding. What it doesn't do is it does not obligate funding. It provides suggestions and recommendations, but of course, you all have the final say on the money. It does not set any programs in stone. It's supposed to be a living document, a collaborative document. Amendments are really easy to make, and it does get updated every 5 years, so we want to keep this active and usable. And it also doesn't really create inflexible policies. We want to make sure that this is informed by the public and that it goes through a rigorous public process that remains flexible. So the plan really comes in about 6 core elements. These aren't necessarily the chapters of the plan, but this is what MDNR requires. we'll just start clicking through. The first one is just understanding what we're working with, understanding community context and structure. That includes how the city is run, how Parks and Rec is established. It also goes through an entire inventory, so of all of the city-owned or operated parks and recreation facilities. So you have 30 city-owned or operated facilities. There's a plethora of additional parks through the state, the tribe, et cetera. Got an average accessibility of about 2.03, so that indicates that parks are somewhat accessible to folks with disabilities. Got a lot of ball fields and playgrounds in the city, but what we're seeing is a need for additional adult activities like pickleball, dog parks, dog runs, and access to swimming and beaches in the city. And what we also found is that most residents do have walking access to a park, which is great to see. I mentioned public participation earlier. There's the public hearing and the adoption process, which is required by the state, but we went further. We distributed an online survey that was open for 2 months, I believe. Got over 100 responses on that. We hosted 2 workshops earlier in the fall. And what we're finding when we were talking to residents and users of the parks, safety and maintenance is top of mind, making sure that the existing parks are maintained and look nice and people feel comfortable. That includes a variety of amenities for all ages and abilities. People were really emphasizing paths, so hiking, walking, and biking, swimming, like I mentioned earlier, adult fitness, dog parks, and public events. And of course, restrooms, everybody loves a restroom facility. Green infrastructure and public art also came through. Our analyses really are throughout the entire plan. We look at the demographics of the city, who's living here, who's using the parks. We look at all of the parkland through that inventory and facilities analysis. We did a walkability analysis, which you can see here as a screenshot. Of course, we analyze all of the public participation data and base all of our recommendations off of that data, and that all kind of flows into an action plan. This action plan has it has 2 components. The first one is it's the action plan. It's the goals, objectives, and actions. So the goals are broad, they're system-wide, they're broken down into different objectives, and then the actions further specify how those objectives can be achieved and how they relate to different parks. The other component of this action plan is a capital improvement schedule. On the next slide, Brian, if you would. You're good. So these are targeted improvements that are informed by the goals, objectives, and actions. They're informed by the city budget, the existing capital improvements plan, and of course all of that great public data that we received over the months that we've been working on this. And then another very important component is the various development and asset management plans that both the city has developed themselves and also outside user groups have developed as well. So those are all included in the appendix of the plan. They're referenced throughout, but they're really important and they kind of provide a visual and a roadmap for specific improvements in different parks. And then this is just our schedule. Public review ends tonight, technically. We had the Park and Recreation Board meeting November 29th, where I did a similar presentation, as well as a Planning Commission meeting December 1st. They did provide an advisory recommendation of approval of the plan, which is great. Now we are at the public hearing, December 19th, and then in January, hopefully, you will all be adopting this plan so that we can submit it to the state by February 1st. And that's it. I feel like I spoke real fast, but let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gage. Any questions or comments for Gage before we go into the public hearing?
Oh God, I just walk away.
We need more then. All right, so we will officially open the public hearing on the city's 5-year master recreation plan. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments at this time? If you'd please come up to the microphone. So again, it's the public hearing on the city's 5-year master recreation plan. So any questions or comments? Sure. Denny, if you'd like to come up to if you could, please. State your name and residence, if you would, city
I'm Dennis
residence.
Doherty, and I've been working with the Island Trail Committee over the last 6-7 years on the water trail that we have in the Sioux. I'm just here basically, if you have any questions, we just submitted some ideas on the Harvey Marina on the north property there. So basically, I'm here for, if you have looked at, I think it's on page 101 and 102, there's a list of ideas from Adopt the Park and our committee as to what maybe the city might want to do someday in the next 5 years. And I don't know if you can bring it up there or not. And then on page 102, we have our proposal showing not only moving perhaps the kayak docks over to a more user-friendly pull-out and install and all that stuff, but also we looked at that sunken ship, 1800s vintage ship, and thought, why not put an observation platform in there? We have these, you know, the Valley Camp Museum and the Lake Whitefish Point, Lake Superior Museum, and right in our city limits, we have a really historic ship in about 10 feet of water, 15 feet offshore, and we thought, why not display it? Why aren't we doing something with it? So this is kind of a new idea for us, but it goes along with our other water trail ideas. So if you have any questions on that, I don't know if you have it before you, page.
I was gonna try to bring it up, but it's not loading on my computer. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. I don't know if any of you, I have some, I could hand out, I have some pictures of it, but basically what we proposed is trying to develop that north property a little more. It's sitting there vacant, and working with the Adopt a Park people who want to put in some hammocks and trees and landscape it, and that would really fit perfectly with what we'd like to do, which is to maybe add the picnic tables and maybe an observation tower looking at this historic ship. In fact, there's actually 4 historic ships in our city limits. I just found this out in the last month. And the 3 of them that are right at Harvey Marina were in the Puller Shipyard. I didn't even know there was a Puller Shipyard there, but anyway, apparently they were pulled up in the muck there back in the maybe late 1800s, early 1900s. And 2 of them are sailing ships. They're really unique designs on them, and one is probably an old barge. So just to let you know, we have a unique historical value here at this Harvey Marina that I personally lived here all my life, looked at as an eyesore, and I'm thinking, wow, we can do something with this if we want. So that's just down the line. We're not proposing anything right now. We're just hoping it gets in the master plan, so someday you might look at it and say, hey, yeah, let's go for it. And so that's all I have.
Hey, Bonnie, I got it up on my computer. You wanna throw it up on the screen, please?
Oh, there it is, yeah. If you look at the, yeah, there's a kind of up in the top part there where the greenery is. Just to the north of it, you'll see we have a drone picture of the ship. It's about 110 feet long. All the ribbing structures there, it is really quite there you can see it right there in that scene. And we thought, my gosh, why aren't we doing something with this? And there's another one just to the left of it, the bow's sticking out of there, and when they dredge Harvey Marina, they basically filled in the hull. So we can see part of the other one, and so who knows what we can do with that. But as you'll notice, we propose putting a parking lot in there. And if you've been to Sherman Park and Rotary in the summer, they get pretty filled. Well, we only have one other kind of beach site in the Sioux that people can get to, so we're hoping the city doesn't want to sell this property and turn it into a park with trees and the picnic tables, and maybe this observation tower, which if you scroll up, you'll see we kind of designed it to look like a lighthouse, and people can walk up and be, you know, right kind of underneath the ship and look down on it. Now, the structure on the right side, I've had a lot of people say, you know, we have hundreds of kayaks in this town. Can we get out there and, you know, like store them on site so we don't have to load them up in our car and take them and put them in our garage and all that stuff. So we designed this, and we've already had some places around town that said, hey, we'll help fund this. So we said, we can't do that. We don't even have permission to do this stuff. But just to let you know, we probably can get the funding and all the work and have this done without touching a penny out of the city budget. So kayak storage units for the public, and maybe an observation tower of some kind that kind of looks like a lighthouse or whatever, might add value, and it might attract people, just like, visitors want to go and actually see a shipwreck. Not too many places. I don't think there's any place in Michigan other than on a beach. You can go within the city limits and look at a sunken ship. So that's all I got. Any
Thanks, Denny.
questions?
Good information. Any questions for Denny?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Dr. Flickinger. Yep.
The five-year plan, we're also.
If you could, thank you.
Craig Flickinger on behalf of Rotary. As part of the five-year plan, we've been saving for the last 4 years for putting a flush toilet bathroom at Rotary Park with a pavilion. Scroll just a little farther, there's a little picture, kind of a diagram in that five-year plan. Just to make sure we make it into the five-year plan, because we have the funds, we have almost a little over 100,000 saved. So with DNR grant, yep. Just the kind of the site plan for it. So we have 100,000 saved for the bathroom at this point, and with the DNR grant matching 3 to 1, we should be ready to build. Not this, we can't apply this year because the five-year plan's not ready, but the following year we should be ready to plan. So we'll work with the city and get the engineered plans and everything ready to go by then, hopefully. So just to let you know where we're at. Any
All right.
questions?
No, that's excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Can we bathroom up?
Then you'll be done with your bathroom up at the,
That one should, hopefully it'll be done. It's up. It got froze up, so.
that's great. Thank you for your service. Anybody else in the audience that would like to make any comments at this time? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from the commission? And no action. Yes, sure, Commissioner Bauer.
I just have a question here for the city manager. Under the fiscal impact, where it says that we left funds on the table by not having our plan updated. Our last MDNR grant was for $300,000, and it's unclear to me. I guess there's no amount listed. Do we know, what the amount of money is that we ended up passing on by not having our plan updated, and how that compares to the MDNR grant of $300,000? Because, well, needless to say, that's a lot of money.
Right. Yeah, so in general, the trust fund grants are, I don't want to say easy, they're competitive, but they're a good source of project revenues for any kind of parks. And by not having a master plan updated and on file with the DNR, we're essentially leaving money on the table. I'm trying to remember what this one was. I think we did apply for a grant. Where's Mr. Boyle at? Where's he hiding? Here you go. Do you recall what this $300,000 grant was that we may mention in the agenda item?
We have the Alfred Park stuff right now.
Yeah.
But, we missed out this last year to get into that parade, so.
Yeah, I think the $300,000 was for either the Carbide Dock Alfred Park project, or was for something else that we were gonna shoot for, but because we didn't have one on file, we weren't eligible to apply for it. So, I mean, it could be a lot more depending on the size of the project, because what are they, 80-20?
Yep.
Yeah, the grants are 80-20, so I mean, it could be more depending on the size of the project, but there was something specifically that we were going for that we were ineligible for because we didn't have one on file. And it typically before your master plan expires, you'd start the process of renewing it. So the one that we have in front of you now will be good to 2027-ish? All the way through 2027. So sometime around 2027, we should start working on that. But with the influx in department heads and some of the staff throughout the organization, we didn't really have personnel to take on this project at the time, so we should be on track not to let the Parks Master Plan lapse in the future, but by not having one, we are definitely leaving money on the table.
Thank you.
Good question, Commissioner. Commissioner Busta?
Just a comment, I think I'm one of a handful of full-time recreational professionals in this community, and I've been studying the city's master recreation plan since 1999 as a college student at Lake State, thanks to Deb McPherson and her class. I do want to say that I think it's important. There are some, when we look specifically at the assessment provided within there, I noticed that there has been some changes from draft to draft. I think there's continued some things that need to be looked at still for some correction when it comes to our assessment and inventory of our current parks and our current offerings. I would also say this, and I appreciate what Gage has said about the recreation plan. You know, there's been a lot of focus on this being something that we need to pass for grants, but a city master recreation plan is so much more than something that we need to pass for grants. It actually is exactly what we should be looking at and using when we develop our capital improvement plan for our parks. It's exactly what we should be looking at for establishing our long-term vision. So I think it's really important that we get this right and we don't just simply pass it for grants, because for instance, our master recreation plan the past 5 years really focused on accessibility, and we're still at a 2. I think we need to take our master recreation plan, make sure it is well, so we can fully get where we want this community to be when it comes to parks and recreation. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. And I'll take note, something you said I think was right on is, I know that Gage has been very open-eared and has made a lot of improvements and changes along the way, and I think the public sessions were good, and I attended one of them, or maybe 2 of them, I guess, and was pretty impressed that everybody was pretty engaged and had some good comments, and I think those comments all came forward, so that's certainly an important part of the process. So. Any other comments, questions?
Just to piggyback off of what you said, I went to one of the listening sessions at Sherman Park, and some of those comments that were made there made their way into the report. So you definitely did a good job listening, and I appreciated the photo on page 80, which was my wife and kids. So thank you.
Page 77 is your own portrait. So.
Yeah, strike
Bonnie,
that one from
throw it up on
yeah.
the screen real quick. See, there's proof. He was at them. So just, I guess, just for the commission, since tonight's just the public hearing and we're not seeking any action on it tonight, I would ask the commission, focus on a couple of different things for the next couple of weeks. So within the document itself, there's the assets documentation, which lists not only our parks facilities, but associated parks facilities throughout the town, or throughout the city, excuse me. I would ask you to focus on that and see if there's anything missing. But I would also ask you to look at the goals and the action plans associated with each goal and see if they line up with what your direction is, what you're hoping the plan covers, because that's really the meat and potatoes of it all. I mean, some of the other information is nice to have, but like Commissioner Habusa said, the action and the goals are the things that we'll be utilizing moving forward in working with the Parks and Rec Board to kind of prioritize some of our investments, to work with our different partners throughout the town on what they would like to see done. So I would ask the next couple of weeks to focus on that. And if you have anything that's, up for discussion, or you think needs to be changed, or if there's a grammatical error, just shoot me an email. We can kind of flesh some of that stuff out, so.
Good comments. Just a reminder, if it's in the report, doesn't mean it's going to get done, but if it's not in the report, it won't get grant funded by the MDNR, so. Any other comments? All right, thanks everybody for their participation. We'll move on. Item F was communications. Joe Nolan is not able to be here tonight, so we're going to put that on a future meeting. So we'll move right into item G, which is business items. Number 1, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up first, commission. I cannot talk. I know, consideration. I was gonna say conversation, but we're not doing a conversation. I'm sorry. Up first for commission consideration is a request to approve the purchase of ferric chloride for the water plant and wastewater plant. Staff bids this out annually every year. We received 2 bids back, the low bid being PVS in the amount of $1,386 a dry ton delivered. So we would look for a motion to approve the bid from PVS for ferric chloride for the amount of $1,386 dry ton delivered.
Thanks, City Manager. Any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Marble, would you like to make the motion? It's ferric chloride.
Yeah.
It's dry ton. We'll go
Oh, okay,
over it.
all right, gotcha.
Yes.
For dry time. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off guard.
Motion to approve the bid from PVS for ferric chloride in the amount of $1,386 dry ton delivered.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Any questions or comments on this item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. G, business items, number 2, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission considerations, a request to approve leases with Enterprise for Ford Explorer, patrol-rated Ford Explorers. Excuse me. The police department currently has 4 Ford Explorers that are over 100,000 miles. One's at 103, one's at 114, one's at 155, and one's at 165,000 miles. Given the state of the auto industry right now, we've had a hard time. We've been looking for, to purchase these items. We did have an original agreement, master lease agreement, presented to the commission in February of 2022 as an option as we look forward to replacing some of the Explorers within our current fleet. There's not a lot of options right now. Ford just canceled all of their pursuit-rated Ford Explorers for the remainder of the year into next year. With the high mileage on the Ford that we have right now, we would recommend leasing these out for a 4-year term. Hopefully, the auto industry will kind of smooth out a little bit, but this is one of the few options we have in replacing some of the vehicles. So included in the item, or included in the agenda item, are 2 lease quotes. One is for 2 2023 Interceptors, and one is for 2 2022 Interceptor leases. So if there's any questions, we have to entertain them, but we would look for a motion to approve the leases as presented.
Thanks, City Manager. Any questions or comments on, yes, Commissioner Rubenstein?
How many miles do we typically put a year on these?
So typically you would phase out a police car prior to 100,000. Our vehicles take a little bit more wear and tear based on our roads. Typically, you would replace them out 100,000. So if you're a smaller community, not patrolling as much, they'll last a little bit longer. But kind of 100,000 is kind of the standard there. And you can see the one is approaching almost 200,000 now, but 100,000 is kind of the mark.
Can you specify how many miles
Commissioner
per
Agusta?
year? Sorry. How many miles per year are, on average, we use them then?
It depends, because we're good, so we have about, I think we have 6 or 7 patrol vehicles. We typically rotate them out. The leases themselves are for about 25,000 miles per year, and we probably average around that. Maybe given, like I said, we rotate them out, so maybe some years a little bit higher, some years a little bit lower, but it probably comes to about 30,000 miles a year. We go on a lot of calls, and I'm not, this is just an opportune moment to kind of share this. I got this sent earlier today, so dispatch call volume from the dispatch. Bonnie, if you want to throw it up on the screen really quick, just to kind of highlight our call numbers. So Sault Ste. Marie Police Department is highlighted in yellow, and this is a bi-monthly report, so January, February, March, April. And this end one only goes November through December 15th, but you can see January, February this year, 1,000 calls, the next period, 1,000 calls, May, June is about 1,200, 1,100, 1,100, 700 for this kind of a interim period there. So on average, that's how many calls the service we go for that are logged in through dispatch. And that doesn't necessarily include any of the times we're just patrolling around, or maybe a call comes into the police department, or we're going out on an investigation, whatever the case may be. So that just kind of highlights some of the numbers going out there, but the short of your answer is about 25 to 30,000.
That answer your question, Commissioner? Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Miller?
I think the city manager did a fair job answering our questions about this, but I think there's still a lot of questions about when you lease a vehicle, and when I read through this, there seems to be a lot of other, you said there's not a lot of options right now, but there's got to be some other options, so just so you know, I'll be voting no on this motion, and please don't make me read it.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Bauer, you have your light on?
Yeah. Number one is that if you're gonna vote no on it, there would be no point for you to read it. But, the other thing I was gonna say about this is that with the average being 25 to 30,000 a year, it would seem to me that 25,000, the lease for 25,000 would then be insufficient slightly.
So we'll still have several other, we have 3 or 4 other cars that are under 100,000, and we'll rotate them all out. So we'll keep them under, so the 4-year term is 25,000 miles per year, so it's 100,000 for the 4-year period. And it's just like your own personal leases. If you do lease a vehicle, you know, that's kind of a ballpark number per year, but if you go over 1 year, you go under a little bit, but being about 100,000 for those 4 years will be sufficient enough.
Well, clearly, we need vehicles with these numbers. So I do make a motion that we approve the 4 lease quotes as presented and authorize the city manager to sign all necessary lease agreements.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? Sure, Commissioner Miller.
I just wanted to clarify, maybe Commissioner Bauer didn't understand what I said. I would like to just get some more information before I would vote yes on something like this. It has nothing to do with reading it, Commissioner Bauer.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments? I have a couple comments. We looked at the leasing in February and certainly passed that, so we take a look at it. I'm not a fan of leasing. But we did have our cars canceled, and we need to have police cars, and hopefully this will be an affordable alternative. So we'll have to monitor this very carefully to make sure we don't go over the mileage, as you said, and to make sure that it is affordable, and maybe it is a better option. So we have a motion, and was there support? Been moved and supported. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
One opposed. Motion did pass. Thank you very much. Moving into G, business items number 3, city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request for to approve two motions related to the meter installation project that we've had going on the last year and a half now. So two motions before you tonight. Motion to approve a budget amendment of $34,000 to further fund the purchase of meters, to fund the read hosting notification and leak detection software for the system, and a motion to approve the budget, or to amend the budget project for $70,000 to purchase additional meters. So, as we were going through this project, we identified that we had less meters on record than what were actually out in the system. So I think when we originally started with this project, we had in our heads about 5,034 total meters, but working through some of the information, we actually found out there's about 5,284 meters. Some of them are meters that need to be replaced out in the Odenang subdivision outside of the city limits, but that subdivision has a contract with the city for water services that we are on the hook for. So in order to finish up the project, we need to purchase some more meters. There was an oversight during the budget process last year too that we're gonna try to fix this year for some of the software, the annual hosting fees, and some of the other kind of customer service elements that we wanted to institute with this project. So we have two motions for you. Motion to approve a budget amendment for $34,000, and a motion to approve a budget amendment of $70,000.
Thanks, City Manager. Any questions or comments for City Manager on this item? Sure, Commissioner Rubinstein.
That contract for those meters outside of city limits, do you know how much longer that runs for?
Ever?
Yep.
Where's Kirk at?
It was a 40-year contract.
You say 20 or 40?
It was 40.
40? 4? 40.
I don't know when it started. 2010, 2012.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Answer your question? Yep. Sure, Commissioner Busta.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, is there a set, you talk about expansion here. Is there a set limit to how much that can expand? How much we would be on the hook for over the next 40 years?
So I'm gonna toss that one to Director Twos, because I don't really remember off the top of my head. If you wanna come on up, Kirk. It's been a while. I know we talked about this contract a few times since I've been here. What?
So Odenang is plotted out down there. They actually have a platted subdivision down there. The exact number, I don't know. They were planning on 40 for this year, which did get canceled, but I have heard upwards of another 100 units down in that area. So if they stick to the original plan, it could be 100 plus, but it just depends on their funding and what they want to do with their lands down there.
Any other questions for the director while he's here? Commissioner Bauer?
Yeah, I got a question for anybody who
Either or.
wants to answer it. Maybe you don't, maybe you know it, maybe you don't. But I was wondering, the 260 meters that we're buying here, did they end up costing us more per piece because we didn't buy them with the original 5,000?
Yeah, we're on,
Yeah, I was
so
afraid of that.
it's gone through 2 rate adjustments since our original project, so it went up quite substantially. I think about $50 per meter more.
Yeah, it's too bad. Thanks.
Good questions. Any other questions? All right, there are 2 items to the motion. Commissioner Habusta, would you like to take this one?
Motion to approve the budget amendment for $34,000 to fund meter reading, hosting, notification, and leak detection software for 2023.
Support.
Motion and support. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion pass. Second motion, Commissioner Habusta.
Motion to approve the budget amendment for $70,000 to purchase additional meters to complete the meter project and purchase meters needed for system expansion.
Support.
Been moved and supported.
Y'all
Any-
can jump in at any time.
Been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both motions passed. Thank you very much. Under G, business items, number 4, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request for a change order related to the old water treatment plant demolition that we've been working on for the last few weeks. Long story short, there was some additional work that was identified. Bonnie, you want to throw it up on my screen really quick? I have a picture here for you all. Long story short, this concrete pillar or slab was not known at the time of the original bids or when they did the walkthroughs with the contractor. I believe, from what I understand, talking to Director Twos, it looked just more like a brick wall. But once that brick wall started coming down, it was just this gigantic concrete slab, which required a lot of extra hauling that was outside of the original contract, some extra equipment to chip down the concrete, and overall just more work. So in working with the contractor, thank you, Bonnie, staff feels that that is kind of outside of the original agreement that was put in place between the city and Bay Area Demolition. The additional work is roughly $10,000, $10,547 to be exact. The project has a budget of $125,000. If this change order is approved tonight, there's still a balance of $26,000. So we're still within our project budget for this particular budget, or project. So we would look for a motion to approve the change order as presented.
Okay, questions or comments for City Manager on this item? Commissioner Habusta.
Can you tell me just a couple questions in regards to the company who bid on the project? Just I've reviewed the bid and the contract. Did they walk through? Did they perform a walkthrough? Yes. And were they provided access to plans for that building? And did those plans contain that pillar?
Come on down, Director Twos.
Yes, they were provided the original blueprints for that. The original blueprints don't show detail on that structure. It showed it as a wall. It would look on a blueprint.
Okay, thank you.
And everybody went through, I don't remember, what do we have, 3 bids for this project?
We had 3 total bids.
Yeah, 3 total bids. There was an opportunity for all the contractors to do a walkthrough. And the commission had an opportunity to do a walkthrough. You weren't on the commission at the time yet, but, you know, the interior isn't lit. There's no electricity to it. The windows are all boarded up, so it was kind of a dark space. I don't want to say it's full of a lot of garbage, but there is a lot of garbage in it too. So it is something that could have been easily missed. Like I said, it's covered in bricks, and if it's not identified on the blueprints or the as-builts, it's something that could easily be missed.
Good question, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Miller, would you like to make the motion?
I'll make the motion, but I have a comment first, Your Honor.
Sure.
I remember when this came before us, we hadn't heard anything about the old pump house for a lot of years, and then when we demolished it, then a lot of people said, oh, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, but we got a really good bid on this. And I remember administration bringing it to us, and the bid was really good. So if there's an extra $10,000 on it, I don't see any problem with it. I think we still got a good deal, and we got it down before anybody got hurt. I will make that motion, Your Honor. Motion to approve the change order?
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of approval of the change order signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passed. Moving on to G, business items number 5, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request regarding the George Kemp Marina operations. So a couple things here for the commission. We're looking for a motion to authorize the creation of the position of harbor master within DPW, and a motion to approve the amended operational budget and fee schedule for the George Kemp Marina. So, long story with the George Kemp Marina, the city has contracted the operations out with a different entity here in the city since its inception. This summer, the contractor indicated their desire to move one of their part-time workers to a full-time position. Upon that request, we kind of looked at ourselves that if there is going to be a full-time person running the marina, we might as well bring it in-house and utilize that employee in some other spots too. So, we have put together a job description for the commission's consideration, as well as an operational budget. Like I mentioned, a lot of this stuff was handled by a contractor for the longest time. With this item, there is a couple of user fees that would be increasing, but mostly the funding source for a move like this, including your items, the budget, and it shows kind of the expenses, but the big revenue source for this particular item is the gas revenues, which would pay for the position as well as the part-time staff, in addition to the seasonal and transient rental rates for the docks, right? Perfect, thumbs up.
All right, thanks, City Manager. Anybody have any questions about this item for the City Manager? All right, there are two separate motions, so Commissioner Bauer, was that a motion you'd like to make?
So move that we authorize the creation of the position of harbor master within the Department of Public Works.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Bauer.
Further, I move to approve the amended operational budget and fee schedule for the George Kemp Marina.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both motions passed. Thank you. Item number 6, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request to dispose of the Fort Street Bridge. For those of you that don't know, the Fort Street Bridge was a one of the city's older bridges that has been since removed and is sitting over by, what's the park? Ashman Bay, thank you, sir. Sitting over by Ashman Bay. At one point in time, there was some conversations about what to use the bridge for in the future. None of those plans have panned out, and we don't really have anything moving forward. In talking to engineering, the bridge is structurally sound. There's been a lot of pieces that have been removed. Basically, if it didn't need a truck to move it, people were sealing parts off of it. So it may be structural, but it's still missing a lot of pieces. So without a plan in place to reutilize the bridge, and it kind of being in the shape that it's in, just kind of sitting off in one of the parks, staff and I would recommend disposing of the bridge. We have an estimate included in here. There's about 80 to 100 tons of scrap metal. I believe that's roughly estimated at coming in about 12,000 or so. Yeah, about 12,000. After deducting the disposal costs, we'd recoup about $4,100, but we're not necessarily in this to try to make money for the budget or anything like that. It's just a unused asset that's kind of sitting in one of the parks with no plans, no direction, and we would just like to clean up that area by removing the bridge.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions or comments? And you have assured us that State Historic Preservation Office and MDOT and everybody involved has approved of the plan. So, Commissioner Rubenstein?
Motion to approve disposal of the remaining steel pieces of the Fort Street Bridge for scrap value or sale on GovDeals.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you very much. Moving on into item 7, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission considerations, request from the EDC to approve contract with Explore Solutions for development of an economic development strategic plan, as well as a motion to move money from their fund balance to fund said plan. So EDC staff did put a bid out. I believe they received 3 or 4 bids. After the staff and the board reviewed the bids, there was a motion to move forward with authorizing a contract with Explore Solutions. The intent, again, is to create a strategic plan for the Economic Development Corporation in terms of future direction, future metrics, and future projects. So we look for a motion to approve the EDC to contract with Explore Solutions for a strategic plan, as well as a motion to approve the amendment for EDC contracted services from 32,000 with 29,000 coming from the EDC fund balance.
Thank you, City Manager, and Executive Director Jeff Holt is here. Thank you for being here. I don't know if you have any questions, comments, or did you? Sure, if you want to come up to the microphone, thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I didn't know if it was a.
That's all right.
Thanks.
Well, first, thank you for the consideration. This will have 4 phases to this process, and I believe you've got a copy of the most recent PowerPoint that outlines the 4 stages. But a couple of things that I'd like to point out. The kickoff meeting will be the first or the second week in January, and the commission will be invited to that if they would like. But our phases will be as follows. The project initiation, which will include the project launch and workshop and the background research and documentation review. Phase 2 is a laundry list of things, baseline analysis, assessment of redevelopment opportunities, community competitive review, best practices in local economic development, and community outreach would include 4 focus groups, targeted one-on-one meetings, general public online survey, youth consultation online survey promotion, and a familiarization tour, which they will be part of. At phase 3 would be the validation workshop and visiting session, and also including the strategic and action plan. And then phase 4 is the draft submission and presentation to the EDC and the City Commission, and final strategic plan submission and presentation, and progress meetings. Just a reminder, it'll be held every 2 weeks, more than likely, and the meetings will help identify any issues that arise, and of course, the Explorer Solutions will provide agenda and take minutes for those meetings. That was briefly the outline.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Executive Director Holt? Sure, Commissioner Rubenstein.
No questions, just a comment asked. I had a chance to sit through the presentation from Explorer Solutions, and they did a good job, and I think this will be a really positive thing. So,
All right, thanks for your comment.
Thank you.
Any others? Commissioner Bauer.
Yes, I'm, personally, usually not that big on consultants. And as a matter of fact, you were on the board back when we went through the whole McCarthy thing, and I know you voted against that because you and I were the only 2 who did. Of course, I myself have used a consultant, John Schmidt with the Small Business Development Center, the restaurant guru, and he did me some good. I'll admit that right now. If Jeff's on board, then I don't see any reason why we shouldn't go forward with this. But I don't know. I mean, it just kind of reminded me of that, and I remember how against that we were at that time, and rightly so. But I guess we'll see what $29,000 worth of advice sounds like when we get it, right? The other thing is, though, I mean, if you're going to pay somebody this kind of money, to do this type of research and provide you with advice, then you're practically obligated to follow through with whatever they advise, right? Because you don't pay for that kind of money for advice and then say, no, we're not going to take your advice. So, I mean, that's the one commitment that by voting in favor of this that we would have to make like right now. Yeah, I just want to bring that up.
Good points. I think this was only about 30% of that vote, if I recall that. It was back 15 years ago, but
you mean
this was a lot lower.
Of the money?
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Right.
Because the first time he helped us for free.
Right.
Then the first set of money was $40,000. Then when, after he did the study, it was gonna be another $100,000 to help us fulfill what we found out in the first 40,000.
And that's your fear on this one, is that what you're saying?
You know, I don't really have that kind of a fear
Okay.
out of this group like I did with, you know, with that situation. But I will also say that, you know, in looking at Explorer Solutions credentials and the groups that they have, and I don't have the kind of time that to look into things like I had back then, but I remember I took a really good hard look at, you remember Rock Forward with Rockford, Illinois and everything, and how much good did he actually do them? And the answer was none, you know, and a couple of the other things that, you know, that his development company did, you know, really didn't amount to anything. I mean, the people that Explorer Solutions have consulted, you know, what kind of results have they really gotten out of it? I do not know. And I didn't really have the time to research it on my own. But although, didn't they, I think they were in on the Battle Creek Airport, right? And I know that that's a fairly successful operation, or am I wrong?
They could have.
Did I misremember that?
They've got a lot of experience in northern Michigan and in northern Ontario as well. And I've contacted the references, and they came very highly recommended.
That's great. I trust your judgment on that
Well,
implicitly.
It's a lot of money, and I understand that, but I think we'll look forward to a positive result.
All right, any other questions or comments? All good comments? Let's turn, well, Commissioner Rubenstein, I know you just did one, but you are the liaison to the boards. Would you like to make the motions?
Motion to approve the Economic Development Corporation to contract with Explorer Solutions for an economic development strategic plan in the amount of $29,400.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 2, Commissioner Rubenstein.
Motion to approve the amendment of line item EDC contracted services 244-728-801.00 to $32,900 with $29,400 coming from the EDC fund balance.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both motions passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving into item H, which is city manager announcements and updates. City Manager Chapman.
Not too much for the commission tonight. Just an FYI, I'm going to be out of the office a little bit this week and next week for the holidays. I've got on here December 23rd, but it'll actually probably be December 22nd. So just as an FYI. And then as a reminder, 2023 downtown New Year's Eve ball or anchor drop hosted by the DDA, Stephanie Sprecher over there. On New Year's Eve, we have a live air event from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. There will be a kids anchor drop at 8 p.m. and an annual anchor drop at 12 a.m. So there will be warming stations, 5K, a whole bunch of entertainment and good times. So make sure you come on out.
All right, any questions for City Manager or for Director Sprecher on the?
I have one.
Sure,
Isn't
Commissioner
that
Miller.
a .5K? It's not a 5K,
Oh,
is it?
0.5.
There's a big difference between a .5K and a 5K.
Yeah, at midnight.
Yeah.
Especially when you've been drinking.
Okay, it's a .5K, so nobody has to be scared of that. All right, any other questions or comments? Moving on into item I, matters presented by the public. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to make any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move into item J, which is matters presented by the City Commission. Anybody, commissioners? Commissioner Bauer, your light's still on, or are you? Commissioner Miller.
Since this is the last meeting of the year, I think we should just wish everyone season's greetings. Happy holidays to everyone. I hope you're all safe, and I hope you're all with us when we have our next meeting in January.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Certainly on behalf of the commission and the city administration, we'd like to wish everybody, as Commissioner Miller said, a Merry Christmas, Happy
And Happy Hanukkah.
and certainly a Happy New Year to everybody. So thank you very much. Commissioner Bauer.
Your Honor, I move that we adjourn this lengthy meeting of the city
Support.
commission.
Is there any support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any questions or comments? No. All in favor say aye.